Have you ever felt that unsettling sensation when your mind wanders to questions without answers? That moment when you glimpse the vastness of what you don't know about yourself, your purpose, or the meaning behind your existence. Most people experience this vertigo and immediately retreat, filling their lives with noise, distraction, and comfortable certainties. But what if this psychological void, this inner darkness that seems so threatening, is actually the birthplace of your greatest potential? Throughout human history, mystics, philosophers, and now modern psychologists have discovered a counterintuitive truth. The parts of ourselves we most fear confronting contain the seeds of our most profound transformation. When Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung developed his concept of the shadow, he wasn't simply identifying the darker aspects of human nature, he was mapping the territory of untapped human potential. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung wrote, acknowledging that growth requires confronting what we've hidden from ourselves. This inner void manifests differently for each of us. For some, it appears as existential questions that arise in the quiet hours of night. For others, it emerges during major life transitions. Career changes, relationship endings, health challenges, when familiar identities and securities fall away. Many first encounter it during what philosophers call limit experiences, moments when ordinary reality seems to crack open, revealing deeper layers of existence. Regardless of how it appears, this void represents both our greatest fear and our greatest opportunity. Consider how often your life is organized around avoiding this confrontation. The endless scroll through social media, the next series to binge watch, the drink that takes the edge off. These aren't merely pleasures, but often sophisticated avoidance strategies. Even ambition can function as an elaborate escape, with achievement serving as distraction from deeper questions about purpose and meaning. The void doesn't discriminate between healthy and unhealthy avoidance. It simply waits patiently for us to turn and face it. What happens when we do? Unlike what our fears suggest, facing our inner darkness doesn't typically lead to dissolution or breakdown. Rather, it initiates what mythologist Joseph Campbell called the hero's journey, a process of descent and return that transforms ordinary consciousness into something more integrated and expansive. This pattern appears across cultures and throughout history, from ancient initiation rites to modern psychotherapeutic approaches. The void is not a destination, but a threshold, a passage we must navigate to access our deeper resources. A remarkable example comes from psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl observed that even in the most extreme suffering, those who found meaning in their experience could endure what seemed unendurable. The void of suffering became, paradoxically, the source of profound insight. When we are no longer able to change a situation, Frankl wrote, we are challenged to change ourselves. This principle extends beyond extreme circumstances to everyday encounters with our internal void. What many don't realize is that avoiding this confrontation extracts a tremendous psychological cost. The energy required to keep uncomfortable truths at bay depletes our vitality and creative capacity. Jungian analyst Robert Johnson observed that to own one's shadow is to reach a holy place, an inner center, not attainable in any other way. The parts of ourselves we reject don't simply disappear. They operate autonomously, influencing our relationships, work, and life decisions from below the threshold of awareness. Our unconscious fears, desires, and potentials don't await our recognition to exert their influence. They shape our lives whether we acknowledge them or not. The void often communicates through what Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to reflect our inner state. You might notice recurring patterns in relationships, persistent challenges that follow you across different contexts, or dreams that repeat variations of the same theme. These aren't random occurrences but signals from the deeper mind, invitations to engage with what philosopher Martin Heidegger termed the uncanny, the strange yet familiar quality of encountering aspects of ourselves we've disowned. Modern neuroscience offers fascinating insights into this process. Research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself through new experiences, suggests that confronting our psychological void actually creates new neural pathways. What we experience as emotional or existential discomfort corresponds to the brain forming connections between previously isolated networks. The temporary discomfort of facing our inner darkness represents the mind integrating what was previously fragmented, creating the neural foundation for greater psychological wholeness. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described this confrontation as the dizziness of freedom, the vertigo we experience when facing the full scope of our potential beyond socially prescribed identities and expectations. This dizziness isn't something to avoid, but to move through. Like a skydiver experiencing the initial terror of freefall before the exhilaration of flight, encountering our inner void requires moving through fear to discover what lies beyond it. The void seems threatening precisely because it challenges our limited self-concept, offering something more expansive in its place. This understanding transforms how we view psychological suffering. Depression, anxiety, and existential crises, while painful, often signal that we're being called to engage with deeper dimensions of ourselves. Psychologist James Hillman suggested that psychological symptoms are not merely problems to eliminate, but communications from the soul, attempts to redirect us toward more authentic living. When conventional structures of meaning fail us, the resulting discomfort serves as an invitation to discover more substantial sources of purpose and value. The creative process illustrates this dynamic beautifully. Artists, writers, scientists, and innovators frequently describe creativity as emerging from a space of emptiness or not knowing. Composer John Cage noted that, "The first question I ask myself when something doesn't seem to be beautiful is why do I think it's not beautiful? And very shortly, you discover that there is no reason." This willingness to suspend judgment and enter uncertainty, to face the creative void, precedes genuine innovation. The breakthrough follows the breakdown of previous certainties. This pattern extends beyond individual psychology to collective transformation. Cultural anthropologists studying initiation, rites across diverse societies, have identified a consistent three-phase structure: separation from previous identity, liminality, a threshold state of ambiguity and possibility, and reincorporation, emergence with new status and understanding. The middle phase, liminality, corresponds to the void, a space where previous certainties are suspended and new possibilities emerge. What appears as chaos or emptiness actually functions as the womb of new creation. The void also reveals itself in relationships, particularly when conflicts arise. The aspects of others that trigger us most intensely often reflect disowned parts of ourselves, what Jung called projections. When someone's behavior evokes disproportionate emotional reactions, it frequently signals that they've activated our relationship with the void. These triggers aren't obstacles to connection, but opportunities to reclaim projected aspects of ourselves, leading to greater wholeness and more authentic relationships. Mindfulness practices offer practical tools for navigating this territory. By developing the capacity to observe our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without immediately identifying with them, we create space to engage the void without being overwhelmed by it. This doesn't mean detaching from experience, but developing what psychologist Rick Hansen calls resilient awareness, the ability to remain present even with difficult material. Through consistent practice, what once seemed threatening becomes accessible, even friendly territory. The body itself provides another pathway. Somatic approaches to psychology recognize that our physical experience contains wisdom that conceptual thinking often can't access. The void manifests not just in thoughts, but in bodily sensations, areas of tension, emptiness, or activation that signal deeper psychological material. By attending to these sensations with curious awareness, we can engage the void through direct experience rather than abstract analysis, often bypassing the conceptual mind's defensive strategies. Creativity provides another avenue. Expressive arts, whether visual, musical, movement-based, or written, allow us to articulate experiences that lie beyond ordinary language. The creative process naturally bypasses our analytical defenses, providing access to material from the void that might otherwise remain inaccessible. Even simple creative practices like free writing, spontaneous drawing, or improvised movement can become portals to deeper self-knowledge. Dreams offer perhaps the most direct communication from the void. Jung considered dreams not merely random neural firings, but meaningful messages from the unconscious, containing perspectives and information unavailable to the waking mind. By recording and reflecting on our dreams, particularly recurring themes or emotionally charged imagery, we can develop a relationship with the void that transcends our ordinary consciousness. The dream world speaks in symbols precisely because it communicates from beyond conceptual boundaries. Throughout history, various wisdom traditions have developed maps for this inner territory. Buddhist teachings on emptiness, shunyata, Christian mysticism's dark night of the soul, Taoist concepts of wu-wei, non-doing, and shamanic practices of dismemberment and reconstitution all describe the process of encountering and integrating the void. While their cultural frameworks differ, they converge on a common understanding. What seems like emptiness or chaos from one perspective reveals itself as fullness from another. The paradox at the heart of this journey is that what we most fear often contains what we most need. In Greek mythology, the hero Perseus could only defeat the Gorgon Medusa, whose direct gaze turned men to stone, by looking at her reflection in his polished shield. Similarly, we cannot directly conquer our fear of the void through frontal assault, but must approach it indirectly, through reflection, symbolism, and gradual engagement. What cannot be faced directly can often be approached through metaphor and creative exploration. Integration, not elimination, represents the goal of this work. We don't solve or overcome the void, but develop a new relationship with it, recognizing its necessity in the ecology of the psyche. Just as natural ecosystems require both growth and decay, light and shadow, our psychological wholeness depends on embracing the full spectrum of experience. The void isn't something to transcend, but to incorporate into an expanded understanding of who we are. This integration manifests as increased psychological flexibility, the capacity to respond to life's challenges from a wider range of resources rather than rigid patterns. When we've faced aspects of ourselves previously hidden in the void, we're no longer compelled to flee from certain experiences or compulsively seek others. We develop what psychologists call response flexibility, the ability to choose our reactions rather than being driven by unconscious forces. Freedom emerges not from avoiding the void, but from exploring and integrating what it contains. The rewards of this journey extend beyond personal well-being to ethical development. When we recognize and integrate our own shadow material, we're less likely to unconsciously project it onto others, reducing the psychological basis for prejudice, scapegoating, and unnecessary conflict. As Jung observed, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. By owning our projections, we contribute to more genuine understanding across differences of all kinds. This work also awakens capacities for genuine compassion, both for ourselves and others. When we've faced our own darkness, we're less likely to judge others for theirs. We recognize the universal human struggle with the void, and develop what Buddhists call the tender heart, a quality of awareness that recognizes vulnerability and suffering without either sentimentality or judgment. This compassion emerges not from moral obligation, but from direct recognition of our shared human condition. Creativity flourishes when we develop a relationship with the void. Many artists, writers, and innovators report that their most significant work emerges not from certainty, but from questions. Not from knowing, but from not knowing. The void functions as what philosopher Heidegger called the clearing, an open space where new possibilities can emerge. By cultivating comfort with uncertainty, we create conditions where genuine originality can flourish rather than recycling familiar patterns. Perhaps most importantly, engaging the void transforms our relationship with mortality itself. Death represents the ultimate void that haunts human consciousness, the certainty of our eventual non-existence that philosopher Martin Heidegger considered the fundamental anxiety underlying all others. By developing familiarity with interior darkness and emptiness, we cultivate resources for facing mortality not as an enemy to deny, but as an essential dimension of the human journey. As the Stoic philosophers recognized, contemplating death enhances our capacity to live fully in the present. The invitation of the void isn't to perfect ourselves or achieve some final enlightenment, but to participate more fully in the mystery of being human. It asks not that we eliminate our flaws, but that we become large enough to hold our contradictions. integrating what poet Walt Whitman called our multitudes. This integration doesn't end our struggles, but transforms our relationship with them, allowing us to find meaning and even beauty in the full spectrum of human experience. So, what practical steps might we take to begin this journey? Start with small acts of honest self-reflection. Notice where you habitually turn away from uncomfortable truths about yourself or your life. Practice sitting with uncertainty rather than rushing to premature closure. Pay attention to your dreams, emotional triggers, and bodily sensations as messengers from beyond your ordinary awareness. Cultivate creative practices that bypass your analytical defenses. Find companions for the journey, whether therapists, spiritual directors, or trusted friends, who can witness your exploration without trying to fix or change you. Remember that the void isn't something to conquer once and for all, but a dimension of experience we learn to navigate with increasing skill. Like the ocean, it can't be defeated or eliminated, only respected and engaged with appropriate wisdom. The goal isn't to reach some final destination beyond the void, but to develop a different relationship with it, one characterized by curiosity rather than fear, engagement rather than avoidance. What awaits on the other side of this engagement isn't some perfect state of completion, but what Jung called individuation, the ongoing process of becoming more fully ourselves, integrating both light and shadow into a larger wholeness. This journey doesn't promise constant happiness, but something perhaps more valuable, a sense of authenticity and integrity, of living in alignment with deeper truths rather than surface appearances. The darkness within, when faced with courage and curiosity, reveals itself not as an enemy, but as a teacher, offering wisdom unavailable through any other path.